Trams for the Watsons Bay service were housed at Fort Macquarie and in this depot in New South Head Road, Rushcutters Bay. Although a toast rack breakdown tram can be glimpsed, all regular services on the Watsons Bay line were provided by corridor trams from as early as 1934. Travellers from the affluent suburbs on this route thus enjoyed a particularly comfortable service. These trams are R1 class corridor trams. They were a refinement of the earlier R class design, which had two centre doors on each side. An inbound tram approaches the latter day terminus at Queen's Square. The curve on this loop was a 46 feet radius, the tightest on the Sydney Tramway network. After passing St Mary's Cathedral, trams traversed Boomerang Street to reach William Street. At King's Cross, the line turned briefly into Darlinghurst Road and then into Bayswater Road. At Rose Bay, climbing the hill from Rose Bay. In the background, the Flying Boat Base, which has followed the trams into history. Along the suburban streets of Vaucluse, with more glimpses of the harbour. And then begins the descent on single track to Watsons Bay. Trams ran down through Watsons Bay Park, past two loops, the first of which was Park Loop. Through the shady spot known as the Glen, and to another loop named Gap Loop after the gap nearby. Safety from collisions on single track lines such as this by railway style staff and ticket working. At Gap Loop, the conductress obtains the staff, authorising the tram to continue on its way. Watsons Bay terminus in Military Road. Let's watch another tram making the scenic descent through Watsons Bay Park, one of the outstandingly attractive tram rides in Sydney. The Watsons Bay line was one of the few lines in Sydney to be closed and then reopened. In December 1949, the section beyond Dover Road, Rose Bay, was closed, but public protest led to its reopening in the following May. In later years, the Transport Department adopted a policy of removing overhead wiring or paving over tracks within hours of tramway closures to prevent any resumption of service. Now, let's take a ride up the hill. Separate overhead wires were provided for trams in each direction, and check rails provided added security from derailments on this sharply curved line. More work for the conductress, collecting the staff at Park Loop. As we approach the signal station at Vaucluse, another tram departs for the city. At the beginning of the double track, we pass an outbound service. The crossover at Williams Street Double Bay was the terminus for many trams which did not make the full trip to Watsons Bay. Extra trams also ran from the city to Rose Bay and to other intermediate points, providing a very intensive service on the inner section of the route. Inbound at King's Cross, trams passing at the top of William Street. The evening peak hour in William Street seems no less busy in 1960 than it is today. The neon advertising signs, which were once a feature of William Street, provide a backdrop to these trams at dusk. Trams on the Elizabeth Street routes reached Circular Quay via Phillip Street, turned briefly into Bridge Street, then into Young Street. Departing from Circular Quay, trams turned into Alfred Street, which they traversed for a short distance before reaching the foot of Phillip Street. grade in Phillip Street was steep, and trams had a slow climb as far as Bridge Street. Reverse curves took trams from Phillip Street into Hunter Street and then into Elizabeth Street. Trams round the Hunter Street curves, seen from the roof of what was then Qantas House. Phillip Street at this point was realigned in 1960. An inbound tram approaching Hunter Street. Crossing Martin Place. An outbound tram approaching Market Street. Elizabeth Street has many moods, and the trams were part of all of them. Trams for Bondi via Bellevue Hill turned out of Elizabeth Street at Park Street. Like many others, the junction was controlled by an elevated signal box. After passing the Australian Museum, trams turned into Yurong Street, then into Stanley Street, and into Burke Street. Barkham Avenue Viaduct near St Vincent's Hospital enabled trams to cross a low-lying section of ground on a bridge constructed for their sole use. After the tram line closed in 1959, the viaduct was converted to a roadway. Travel across the viaduct offered tram passengers a close-up view of Darlinghurst backyards. Further on, an inbound tram turns from Glenmore Road through reverse curves leading to MacDonald Street. The route to Bondi via Bellevue Hill took trams through the narrow streets of East Sydney and Paddington. Often there was little opportunity for motorists to pass a tram. In 1954, this route was cut back to Ocean Street, Woollahra. The next scene shows preparations for the new terminal arrangements. Edgecliff Road, Grosvenor Street crossover, turning into Old South Head Road. At Bellevue Hill, descending Birriga Road. The poor condition of the tracks was the official reason for early closure of this line. Turning into and out of Campbell Parade, Bondi. An inbound tram and bus in Birriga Road nearing the top of Bellevue Hill. Approaching Ocean Street inbound. A view at the same location in 1959 shows the tram tracks removed and a tram swinging into the truncated terminus. This particular tram continues up Ocean Street towards Waverley Depot, and intending passengers for the city are disappointed. Trams for Bondi via Bondi Junction turned out of Elizabeth Street into Liverpool Street. The signal box from this spot is preserved at the Tramway Museum at Loftus. Trams from Railway Square to Bondi also reach Liverpool Street at this intersection. From Liverpool Street, trams ran up Oxford Street to Taylor Square. The points for the junction leading to Crown Street. From the corner of Moore Park Road, the tracks were located in a reservation in the centre of Oxford Street, providing an opportunity for some very fast running. In later days, the track was not always well maintained, providing at times a bouncy ride. The trams which ran to Bondi and Bronte were housed at Waverley Depot at the corner of Oxford Street and York Road. Trams leave the depot to take up running for the afternoon peak hour. When tram services to Bondi and Bronte ceased, this depot was converted for use by buses. P-class trams did not predominate on the Bondi and Bronte lines until after 1957. In earlier years, O-class trams provided most of the services on these routes, supplemented by corridor cars. Bondi Junction, in the heart of the district, which took its name from the Tramway Junction, and which has retained that name long after the trams have gone. This tram is heading towards Bondi on track relaid in concrete for the Royal Tour in 1954, only a few years before abandonment. Wherever the Queen was scheduled to travel during that tour, tram tracks were relaid in concrete. Further on, trams used reserved tracks to reach sea level. This is the descent from Fletcher Street. An inbound tram climbs from beneath the Bondi Road overbridge. On a wet day, this outbound tram is about to strike a spot of trouble. Its trolley pole de-wires. The conductor puts the pole back on the wire and then the tram proceeds. Now we make this descent without incident. And reach sea level at Campbell Parade, where the trams ran in a central reservation. This tram is about to reach the remains of the former Bellevue Hill Line junction seen a few moments ago. The line from Curlewis Street to North Bondi was used by trams from the city via both Bellevue Hill and Bondi Junction. Opened in 1929, the North Bondi extension was the last major addition to the Sydney Tramway network. North Bondi terminus had 3 tracks, which after 1946 were laid on the level in an excavation in the hillside. When this film was taken shortly before the end of tram services, the excavation had been partly filled in preparation for later use by buses. The 3 tracks allowed departures for 3 destinations: Circular Quay via Bellevue Hill, Circular Quay via Bondi Junction and Central Railway. An inbound tram leaves Campbell Parade to start the climb towards the city. A tram turns at Bondi Junction onto the Bronte line. The descent to Bronte was perhaps the most spectacular of all the beach routes. Trams descended through a rock cutting and emerged high above the beach. They continued on reserved track to the terminus, which was separate from road traffic. An inbound tram leaves Bronte for Railway Square. This tramway route is now used for parking and as a roadway. Trams pass in the cutting above Bronte. The large advertising signs on these P-class trams were a comparatively recent innovation dating from 1952. We leave the Bronte line with more views of trams climbing from the beach and through the rocky cutting.